Hello everyone and welcome back to Brookes Sport's coverage of UK Disability History Month. I'm lucky enough to be joined today by Dr. Georg Herdt. Georg, how are you doing?
All right. Thank you for asking. Thank you for doing this.
Well, thank you for coming here. Do you think you could tell the good listeners today who you are and why we've invited you here?
Yes, I'm George. I got diagnosed with a condition called Friedreich's Ataxia about 5 years ago, and I find that sport is a very great way to compensate with or deal with the implications this disability puts upon me, and great thanks to Brookes Sports and Tom for doing this and supporting me on my path.
So what does Friedreich's Ataxia do? What sort of disease is it?
It's a degenerative disease of the brain that constantly, I usually describe it as a little gremlin sitting in my head and constantly disrupting or disconnecting neural connections. But of course the answer to that is a lot more complicated than a movie description. And one of the first effects of ataxia or Friedreich's ataxia is I lose balance a lot. I just stumble, fall over, general lack of coordination. And yeah, that's not much fun.
No, that sounds absolutely terrible. So it affects your balance and falling over and stuff. And if I'm correct, it also affects your sympathetic systems, like your heart, your breathing and stuff like that?
Yes, there is a problem with one of the heart chambers, but at the moment it looks like that excessive cardio exercise is actually quite beneficial to get the heart strong and pumping and keep going. There are a lot of other effects I'm struggling with, as the ocular movement is disrupted, speech is slurred at times, and when I talk I have difficulties pronouncing words, and you can really see how I start pressing words out by using my chest and my lung volume to speak.
You're doing very well right now. Thank you so much for being here to talk about this. So you mentioned the excessive amounts of cardio you have to do. Why do you do that, George?
Well, excessive is there are kids even in this gym that do so much more I do. When I do rowing, I grew up into a family of keen rowers, and I have been rowing since the day I was born. One of my first memories is being dead weight in a boat, just being gliding along the river and just hearing the noise of the water going past the hull. It's quite pleasant, but with a cane that I started rowing quite seriously by the age of 10. And now looking at Friedreich's ataxia, usually or in a normal progression of this disease, it appears a lot sooner than it did in my case. And I think, or I'm convinced, that my childhood training played a big role in this. I have been a pro athlete or trying to get into the Olympic squad since a child, and training for that. Having done all this rowing and cardio exercises, I think that is a way that keeps the ataxia at bay, which means now, as I'm an older man and not a teenager anymore, I just have to get back to the amount of exercise I did.
Is this amount of exercise, is this medically prescribed? Is this what the doctors or the experts in the area say you should do? Or is this something you want to do because you think it works?
Yeah, that's a very good question. from a medical point of view, it's unclear. I heard of a couple of studies on the positive effects of sport and Friedreich's ataxia, but the study targets are nowhere near the amount of exercise I'm doing on a weekly basis, and that means from a medical point of view I'm in uncharted territory, and I think it works. My falls certainly became less over the years, and I get more control over my movements. I get more control over my back movements, less coordination fails, and I have the statistical value of 1. So it's just me. I think it works. If I can encourage you to get more sport done and do it, I think it's very beneficial.
So I think before we recorded, you actually mentioned that, so you've been training for about 3 years now. You've been back into trying to train full time for 3 years, and that your falls year on year have been lower.
Yeah.
Can you just tell me how, like, over the last 3 years, the number of falls each year, and how much better it's become for you?
Yeah, in terms to quantify this process, I just, without the medical support system to constantly check the intercellular structure of what ataxia does on the cellular level. I just looked at how much in control I am of my movements, and the easiest way to do that is by counting how often I fall over and bruise myself and hurt myself, but really badly sometimes. And that has become less and less and less in the last 3 years, after it was continuously going up. It's just really weird. So one moment you're standing and talking, the next moment you're on the floor after trying to catch your balance for 2 seconds. That is a very interesting experience, to say the least. And yeah, I think especially doing core work and leg work and rowing with cardio. Sure, I mean, the rowing machine is a good all-rounder, so I decided I'd start with that.
Briefly, George, could you give me an idea of some of the key exercises that you believe have really aided your stability since your diagnosis and your training began?
Well, since I come from rowing, I do a lot of rowing, and even though rowing on the water is not possible at the moment, it's great to have access to a facility like Brookes Sport with plenty of equipment at my disposal to try what works and what doesn't. And apart from cardio or rowing machines, I find deadlift and squats extremely helpful with the lower back and the glutes, which apparently are quite weak. So it's also a dangerous exercise that I did not do as a child, and dangerous exercises should not be executed alone. And again, as having Brookes Sport supporting me in this path, it's great. I really feel support.
It's fantastic to hear. We're really happy you feel supported from us. George, coronavirus has disproportionately affected the disabled community. There's a lack of access. A lot of people have had to shield to protect themselves. How has this, and especially lockdown 1, affected you?
Yes, it has quite significantly affected my progress. And when I'm rowing and try to achieve rowing targets, I of course can see my rowing progress. So not only my fight against the condition, but also my physical improvement on the machine, and on the machine I dropped a couple of seconds, but that is certainly something I'm very happy to pay for the fight against the coronavirus. What is less fun is that it also affects my progress against the ataxia, and people with disabilities are just struggling in getting access to the equipment they need to face individual challenges they have to keep going, quite literally in this case. If I'd stopped training, then I would not be able to walk independently, and that is hard. I'm quite fond of being able to walk.
Yeah, I can imagine that. Has anything helped you get through lockdown 1? Because obviously 3 months of everything being shut down, and there's a couple more months before gyms and everything properly reopened. Has anything helped you get through that?
Yes, sure. I have a great network of friends and family. I got a loving wife and 2 great children that support me in the struggle. And in summer it was easier to not go to the gym and do the exercises I see necessary, because it was warmer and I could train outside in the garden better than I can do now. Cold is something that affects my balance significantly. And then I also had friends that helped me by the hand, and we went for a jog around the park, and with support I can do that. Now in winter I can't.
That's brilliant. It's good to have a good support network around you.
It is vital, and you are your friends and family. You're not alone in this. You are who supports you.
George, clearly exercise, physical activity is a huge part of your life, and it's become really important. What are your future goals in this? What do you hope to achieve?
Well, my main target is gaining or keeping independence. That is the goal behind all of this. My daily routines, my increased workload is I just want to be able to be there for my family and take my children to school. I just having a normal life, really. That is the target. Now, a side effect of this is that obviously by having a rowing background, I'm getting better and better and better at it. And then maybe I will start or find a career in sports at some point. What the ataxia prevented was my first choice of career, and we just adapt and find a career in what is possible for us.
George, if there's one message you could give to everybody watching this today, especially people suffering from Friedreich's ataxia or similar diseases, illnesses, disabilities, what would that message be?
Well, I can only speak from my own experience for the path I walked, and that is do more sport. Just exercise your lower back, try squats, try deadlift, don't do them alone, and start rowing. The younger the better. I started at 10. It's a great sport. Apparently it's pretty healthy. So that would be my general advice. Find your way with limitations, or find a way to play with the cards you have been dealt with.
all that's left is for me to thank you for coming in, George. Thank you so much for sharing your inspiring story with both me and everyone who's watching. Thank you for watching. Let's keep the conversation going. #us Brookes Sport Disability Month.